Now, Schubert wrote a symphony. Too bad, he didn't finish it. Gershwin took a chord in G and proceeded to diminish it. The young Russian upstart Tatanyev spent decades rivaling and trying to upstage Tchaikovsky, and yet today it's not Tanyayev's day-long opera, the Oresteia, we remember. It's the Nutcracker and the Sleeping Beauty. So posh creatives can let you down. Actually, this light isn't good enough, but we'll try on. Posh creatives can let you down, really disappoint you. So I thought of variations on themes that I found memorable and found my inspiration, not surprisingly, in humbler musical sources. Indeed, that teasing opening is from the verse of an obscure but ambitious 1940s song. And if you can name it, wait until I've finished. About my title today, it isn't from a song. It's my alternative to the one I was given originally, which was, is there a canon in television? Now, I tried this odd word, canon, out on some friends, two of them bright drama students, and I came up with 4 associations: gun, camera, priest, and musical form. Now, all these were fascinating, but the 5th association, the intended one, was not. Canon, as in order of regard or estimation in a cultural or media context. I didn't think it was my business to get into, having a distant and not very fond memory of literary critical heave-hoes where the relative place in a hierarchy of George Eliot over Jane Austen, Thackeray giving way to Dickens, and Larkin and Heaney battling it out, while Auden and Hardy hover in the shadows of an imminent rehabilitation at the expense of Spender, Frost, or Edward Thomas. Now, the movies revel in canonical games, those best lists where Wells, Hitchcock, Scorsese, or Ford topple each other regularly or cause niche headlines in Sight and Sound by submitting to the temporary ascendancy of a French, Japanese, or even Danish incomer. Television isn't or shouldn't be like that. It's too young, too unelitist, and above all, too promiscuous to be canonized. Whenever programs of mine have appeared in best-of lists, they've usually been surrounded by sitcoms, soaps, documentaries about depression or Easter Island, and at least one sample of the prevailing genre to which we all submit, the food program. There was one celebration of 50 groundbreaking programs in which the singing detective, I'm not making this up, was sandwiched between Sky Sports Premier League football and the ABC of churches. Not like for like, and that's the least embarrassing form of public praise. In there somewhere, but sharing the recognition in an essentially non-competitive context. A hierarchy whose basis is memorability rather than sheer excellence, resonance rather than commerciality. I said memorability because there's a quotient to this conference today, especially this bit of it, which puts memory at the heart of critique, research, and maybe value. Now, I admit to not quite getting this. Record and information are our prime objective resources, aren't they? Memory is the outcrop of subjective self. And when deprived of books of technology, it was once safe to say that all we have is our memories. Nowadays, it might be truer to say that all we have is our mobiles. So having word played, prevaricated around, I now admit my present title is a line or part of one from Dennis Potter, and that the past I want to help to propel into the future today is his work, his legacy, his ongoing charisma, both the man and his writing together. 20 years dead this year, media commissioners have always been suckers for anniversaries. So I approached 3 possible sources of support, 2 institutional and 1 creative. The creative idea was to persuade a contemporary high-flying dramatist, I had an approach list of about a dozen, to use Dennis as an inspiration, not just a biographical resource, and respond to some aspect of his phenomenal life or output. Go anywhere you like, and come up with an original but tributary film. I approached BBC Drama with this, who responded warily and then absent-mindedly. Activity languished, and even the text, usually written, I think, while the great executive was lunching somebody else, dried up. I asked the then Director General to put in a word, and there was an immediate alacrity of response again, but not sustained. I continued privately, but nobody from my pantheon of writers wanted to join the dance. From Abbott to Morgan, from Grisoni and Poliakoff and onwards to Andrew Davis, all declined the chalice. Some from terror, more, I think, from indifference. I then proposed a different offering to the BBC. This time, that a new production of his first play, The Confidence Course, the only one of his which doesn't survive, might be attractive. It was a straightforward studio piece, not expensive, which at the time had attracted a strong cast, including Stanley Baxter and Dennis Price, the story being based on the self-motivation courses run then as now by such as the Dale Carnegie Institute. Dennis himself described it. A group of people in a hotel conference room, some of them planted. The speakers were hustling and bustling people up to the front where they would let them speak for 3 minutes, then described how they could have done it better, how they could impress people, standard pop psychology. They would show you how to have a better memory by blindfolding somebody who would recite the list of the 20 objects they had seen. What interested me, says Potter, was why those people were there, what sort of anxiety had brought them to that hotel. But something deeper was worrying me about it, and that was this so-called confidence factor. This was about self-functioning at a time when I was beginning to feel I couldn't self-function. The people running it were saying, we can give you confidence. So that seemed a good push for the BBC now, a very up-to-the-moment self-help paradigm, and one to which Dennis had brought a particular twist, which I haven't told you about. And so I then had a chance meeting with the current controller of BBC One, the channel to which every Potter premiere in the past, from Nigel Barton to The Singing Detective, was premiered. Dennis Potter, she said, that's nostalgia. That could never be BBC One, not now. Now, decoding that remark would be a monstrous task, since practically every bit of dramatic expression on BBC One currently, with the dubious expression of EastEnders, is backward-looking. Nostalgia in that inert, supportive and unconscious and uncreative way. There's better news from another part of the BBC. Radio 3 will do Dennis proud with an in-depth documentary, a series of essays, and maybe a dramatic surprise as well. But the supreme news today is that the BFI, starting this summer and continuing across 2 years, will show every piece, scrap, and glory of his work, with a big range of accompanying seminars, exhibitions, and events. I believe this is the first time a contemporary cultural icon has been honoured on this scale. I would like to thank the BFI, and particularly Marcus, Richard, and their colleagues who are here today for taking that decision. It's very daunting and terrifying. We're just beginning to plan our strategies, and the first deadline isn't far away. Finally, I'm going back to the man himself, not with clips, but with a couple of personal moments and a remark of his relevant to today's subject. He once sent me a present. It was a 2-volume doorstopper about American dance bands, inscribed in capital letters, "With aggressive affection," which said a great deal about him. And on our last face-to-face meeting, 3 weeks before he died, he stopped my heart and composure with a devastatingly simple farewell. Thank you, love you, goodbye. And here is Dennis on the past. The The past and the present are not in your head in chronological sequence. In terms of the way you discover things about yourself and events, 20 years ago can follow yesterday instead of preceding it. If you don't have an alert awareness of the immediate past, then you're being complicit with your seductive present totally. I use the immediate past to intrude on the present so that it isn't a thing over there, the past, which is done with. It's actually running around inside us now, and its misconceptions and its values and its correct conception can be seen just that degree more clearly. The past isn't safely tucked away, it's actually shaping the future too. Back to my title. It comes from Karaoke, one of his last series. Terrific piece, which we didn't do justice to in our production. And the moment comes when our hero gets abrasive with some hospital patients. He's in overnight and will leave in the morning with a death sentence. And there's a line where he says, "Once I could make a whole ward sing," referring, of course, to the singing detective. But this time the atmosphere is fractious, anxious, and bolshy. I'm out of here in the morning. I can say whatever I like.